Don't blow a fuse over electrical overloads. Hello and welcome to another When It Comes Down to It with Chuck Bluthal, Director of Education at the Restoration Technical Institute. If you think you have enough power, think again. Breakers and outlets only are required to continually support the rated amperage at 80%. So if you have a 20 amp circuit breaker or a 20 amp outlet, that means only 80% of that 20 amps is going to be designed for continuous use, which of course is what we're going to do. So that means that literally you only have 16 amps on a 20 amp circuit breaker or outlet, and of course on a 15 amp circuit breaker outlet you're looking at only 12 amps. Now remember, it's continuous duty, so that's why what will happen is you might plug in 2 dehumidifiers into a 20 amp outlet, and it works for the first hour, half hour, maybe even 2 hours, but then it trips when you leave and you're across town, and of course it's rush hour and you got to go all the way back across town and then go ahead and redirect your electrical plug-in system. So keep that in mind. 16 amps on a 20, 12 amps on the 15 continuously. Any more than that, and almost guaranteed, you're going to have an overload on that system. Secondly, there's always the possibility of the customer actually replacing the outlet with a 20 amp outlet or a grounded outlet where there is no ground supply or even only a 15 amp breaker behind it. So never make an assumption that because the outlet is a 20 amp outlet, that the circuit breaker is also a 20 amp circuit breaker. And again, never assume that there's something else on that outlet that's also running. So you're thinking this is the only thing here, that outlet could be going to multiple floors or multiple rooms. You may have other items on it using electricity. So you might not even have that full 12 or full 16. Best way to check this out is with the circuit analyzer shown here. The next step in making sure we eliminate electrical overloads is extension cords. We cannot daisy chain or plug extension cords into each other. Two 25-footers do not make a 50-footer legally. Two 50-footers don't make a 100-footer legally. You need to use a 50-footer or a 100-footer designated. Now also, when we say designated, we want to make sure that the insulation and the jacket is designated for the location. So we're dealing with wet locations, we're dealing with possibly oily or contaminated areas. We want an outside use extension cord with a good solid rubber jacket. And of course, we can never replace the ends. The thing to do is always remember to make sure that the conductor is correctly sized for the amperage drawer. So make absolutely sure if you're going to put 12 amps on an extension cord that what? We have a 15 amp extension cord with the proper gauge or conductor or wire inside of it so that it'll continually carry those 12 amps without a problem. If you have more questions on extension cords, see our other episode, The Do's and Don'ts of Extension Cords. Now, you're already upset with me because you can't daisy chain, and now I've already taken, 20% of the power away from you on the walls that you thought you had when we never have enough in the first place. It gets worse than that, folks. I hate to tell you this, but it all comes back down to the main breaker, or in commercial and residential, might be the main transformer. The main concept is if you look in a circuit breaker panel, you'll see maybe 25, 30 circuit breakers, all at 20 amps. You do not have 80% of that total. You actually only have 80% of the main. So literally, you may have a couple of 100 amps worth of circuit breakers, but you only have a 100 amp main, or 150 amp main is more common. 200 amp main is one of the largest you're going to see in residential. Now, of course, you got to take 20% off of that, and that's the power you're going to have for the entire house to operate. That means stoves, dryers, all of your drying equipment, and everything else. And what I mean by dryers, I mean, of course, clothes dryers for the homeowner. These are big amperage items, that and an electric stove and ovens. So make absolutely sure that you understand that you do not want to overload the main circuit breaker. So don't think it's just the 20 amps circuits or 15 amp circuit breakers, you add them all up and take 80% of that. That's not it, folks. Find that main breaker. It's 80% of the main breaker for the entire house or the entire building, the entire time you're working, all electrical power. So make sure you can fit within those confinements, or supplemental power as in a temporary power pole or a generator may be necessary to operate the project. When it comes down to it, get your staff fully trained and capable of handling these type of issues out in the field routinely. And of course, anytime you run into any significant electrical concerns out in the field, look for a licensed and insured electrician to take care of that project for you before we wind up hurting someone. After all, burning down the house is the fastest way to dry it, but it is not the way we want to do it. As always, thanks for seeing our magazine for distribution of the series, and thank you for learning with RTIlearning.com. So I think you need to do burning down the house somewhere in there. Is it like the song, whatever, you know, yeah, maybe in the bloopers or whatever else. Secondly, we only have the possibility, it gets worse than that, folks. I hate to tell you this, but it all comes back down to the main breaker, or in commercial and residential, might be the main transformer. The whole concept is, if you look in the control,